Hey everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Gooey's Dungeon Dive, the mini podcast where I rank every dungeon in The Legend of Zelda, and we're continuing on with Adventure of Link, and this time we are taking a look at the Island Palace. So this is one where we got quite a bit of a journey to get here. This is really, I want to point this out just because I've mentioned it before, but Zelda 2 I think is really, building on this idea of the journey from getting to one place to another with more of a narrative. Now, obviously there were the hints in Zelda 1, but we're seeing it take more of a structure here in a way. So this one, it depends on if you already went to Death Mountain or not. You actually could have gone before the Medoro Palace, but here you gotta go to Death Mountain to get the hammer, to clear the path, to get to the harbor town of Mido. I'm only bringing this stuff up because eventually it's gonna be just commonplace in every Zelda that you go on a journey to get from each dungeon to the next. But I'm just pointing out here because I feel like this is one of the most involved ones so early on. When you get to the harbor town of Mido, it's similar to all the other dungeons where you learn a spell by basically doing a quest for someone. So here you got to go to some cave, find the water of life, give it to a woman, and you learn the fairy spell, which is required to actually get to the island palace. But another thing that might be required for a new player is the secret passage that actually leads there. Someone in Mido actually tells you that you need to speak to Error for information on the palace. And, people who know this game know who Error is, so you have to trek all the way back to his town to get a little tip from him. He tells you about heading south of the king's tomb to find the passage, basically, to the palace. Now, when you're looking around just south of Mido, there's a pretty standout spot, which you go there and you see the king's tomb. It's a pretty cool location, actually. And if you just head directly south from there, you'll fall into a pit that will eventually lead you to the island that contains the island palace. To me, this is actually pretty neat. And it again gives you more context for these places. You kind of fill in the gaps a little bit with what is this passageway? What's the island palace? What's the deal? But there, I like it actually that there's some there's a little bit of context, but still enough mystery surrounding it that you can kind of build your own story, which I think is pretty fun. So I don't think this palace is more navigationally complex. Maybe it could be minorly, but I didn't really feel it when I was playing. It seemed like kind of the similar ideas with finding the keys and unlocking the doors, but there is other ways that it's a step up from the last dungeon, and it is, I think. One minor bit, though, that I like in regards to the navigation is you briefly go to, this outdoor area to grab the raft, which is, the item in this one. This is kind of a first for the series. There's other dungeons later that do this a lot more interestingly, where you go outside to progress or grab something, whether it's optional or required. So, shout out to that. It's a cool visual too. It looks really cool. Just popping out there real quick for the raft. The raft in this is pretty much similar to Legend of Zelda, where you don't really use it here in the dungeon. There's only a couple spots you really, maybe even it's just one spot you use it. So maybe even less than Legend of Zelda, but it's functionally the same sort of thing. We're gonna need it to go to the next area of the game, which is, that's kind of what you can expect from the raft. So the real step up here comes from the enemies. Throughout this dungeon, actually, I feel like they really considered the fact that you now have the downward thrust, which is a new, attack in your arsenal where you can attack things from above by stabbing down. So you've got these little spiked creatures called Mews, I think it is, and they're similar in the way they move to the bots, but now you can only kill them by stabbing down on them. We've got upgraded armored Stalfos, which are functionally the same. They made it now so they have these spiked helmets, so you can't downward thrust on them even if you wanted to. That was kind of cool, where it's we gave you this upgraded attack, But not every enemy can take it. In fact, it would, you got to be smart about where you try to use it. The one enemy that I think is really cool and really fun to use the downward attack on are the Doom Knockers, I think they are. They are like these armored guys similar to Iron Knuckles that throw like axes at you, basically. And you can try and take them head on, but I find it really fun to jump over them and hit them and dodge their throw and jump over them and hit them in the head. Very satisfying enemy to fight, in my opinion. One of my favorites in the game, honestly. Now, we've also got kind of a continuation of the whole Wosu or Ra type enemy that just keeps spawning and attacking you. Because now in this dungeon we have the Mao, which are also flying heads that now shoot little balls at you and attack you. So it's, even more complex, and they move up and down, so you kind of got to dodge. And yeah, they're pretty annoying, particularly in one room. There's a couple rooms in this where a key is below some blocks and you got to like downward stab to get them. And in some of these rooms, what can happen is like enemies can fall down there with you, and it's very frustrating. And there's one in particular with a bunch of Mao where they always like spawn at the level of the screen you're standing on, and you can just kind of get like surrounded in there, and it's very frustrating. And there's, to get out of it, you got to kind of cut your way out of one side. But if you got one shooting at you from the other side, it can be quite a chore. But there are worse things that I think are coming later in the game, and it's only this one room. It's just kind of I get what they're going for, but these guys are a little much. Maybe they could have toned this down a bit. But I think with the Doom Knocker, actually, I could have lumped this into this category. I think it's like the real main theme of this dungeon, and how difficulty was turned up was there's like kind of a theme of this dungeon to me, which is Iron Knuckles. There's all types of Iron Knuckles. We've got a ton of red ones you have to fight to progress, but they also add in the blue ones, which not only are they stronger, but now they throw ranged attacks at you, which are it's just adds a whole other element to the dodging of them. They can be quite frustrating for sure. And it really leads me to the boss, I guess, which is called the Rebenak. But it's basically just a blue iron knuckle that's mounted on a horse, which again, in the first phase here, you use the downward thrust to attack him, and I think it's one of the most fun boss phases so far, is jumping over him and trying to hit him as he basically charges you with this lance, and you got to hit him. And then after enough hits, he comes off the horse, and he's just a blue dark nut at that point. And I think it's the best fight so far. There are some frustrating elements to it, but overall, from that first phase to like the theme of it, I think it's really cool. Like, I feel like this dungeon is like, it's like the Iron Knuckle hideout almost, and he's like the boss of all of them. And so I don't know, there's something I really like about this dungeon. A lot of it has to do more with the theming. The gameplay is very similar to the last dungeon, but it is a little bit harder. Maybe there's not enough. I mean, they have upgraded enemies, but functionally a lot of them are the same. But I think it does change up the gameplay enough, especially I like the Doom Knocker a lot, for example, and this is probably my favorite boss fight so far. So again, I feel like if we're looking at our list here, it's just another, to me, like incremental step up where I'm having fun. The gameplay is, they're throwing in little bits and changes here. We've got the downward thrust now, which is amazing. We've got all these spells now at our disposal. It's good. So I just, again, it doesn't crack like my favorites here. I like Adventure of Link, but it's got to go. Island Palace here has to still just be outside of that top 5. I'm hoping that we'll get to one in Adventure of Link that really gets me to where I'm like, wow, this is something else. I got to put it up higher. But right now, I just have it going incrementally up, where each dungeon in Adventure of Link is just a little bit more interesting than the last. They all have their fair share of like little annoying things, but overall, I'm having a great time. So it's going to keep my top 5 there with the Legend of Zelda dungeons all the same. So yeah, that's what it's going to be for now. Hopefully, you're still following along. You're still enjoying the adventure of Link. Let me know what you think of this ranking, where you'd put these guys. If you enjoyed the video, give it a like and subscribe and all that. Tell your Zelda friends. And thanks for watching.